Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Tune In with Trevor. I'm Trevor McShane. I have a special guest here today, Arthur Sarkissian, who is a major film producer. Arthur has produced the Rush Hour movies and While You Were Sleeping. But let's just get a quick story of how did you get into the film industry?
Well, it started when I was about 5 years old, 6 years old, when I was raised in Iran. And being that it was such an international place with an American military base, we had all the American movies, British movies, Chinese movies, French movies. So I was kind of exposed to all sorts of cinema. But I developed a love for film at a very, very early age, like I think 5 or 6. I just wouldn't study. I would buy movie magazines. I would be thrown out of class because I was looking at movie magazines, and I was just daydreaming constantly all the time about movies. And my parents would, as every parent would say, you've got to be a doctor, you've got to be an architect, this is not going to get you anywhere. So the point I'm making is the love of film was with me at a very, very early age. It never left me. I was, when I went to London, I went to boarding school. I was the projector of the movies for the kids. Once a week on Saturdays, I would choose the movie they would see. So it was always just film, film, film in my head. Then I got sidetracked. My parents, prior to that, said, we really don't want you to go to the States. It's 20 hours away, because I wanted to study to become a film director. And they said, well, you can go to London. So I ended up in London, again, not giving up my love for film, but I got sidetracked into designing clothes. It was very successful, several years, until Telly Savalas, who people know him as Kojak and many other things he's done, of course. He walked into my boutique one time, and I designed his evening wear for the Royal Command performance in front of the Queen Elizabeth, for Queen Elizabeth. And he started talking to me, and we were just talking about movies, and he said, so you know so much about every movie made, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, even BC movies. Why didn't you do that? I said I wanted to, but I got sidetracked. So he said, come over, I've got a script. And that was my first step to coming to Hollywood. I met Howard Koch Sr., who's one of the most respected and one of the most loved people in this industry. Was, of course, he passed away. His son is Hawk Koch. And he taught me a lot. And I broke into film that way. That was my first movie ever, which unfortunately didn't get released. It's called Beyond Reason. Telly Savalas directed it. And after that, I basically just wanted to just follow doing movies. My very first one was I was raised on a series called Wanted Dead or Alive with Steve McQueen. So I bought the rights to that. I got some money together. It's a long story. I mean, the revolution hit in Iran, and all sort of stuff happened at the time for me.
The first big hit was While You Were Sleeping, which made Sandra Bullock's career. How did that happen? How did that come about?
Okay, so While You Were Sleeping, there were two writers by the name of Fred LeBeau and Dan Sullivan. Fred had written a script for me several years prior to that called Echo of Valor, which was an action movie. I got to know them, nice guys, and then I optioned the script from him, probably one of the most endearing stories I've ever heard, called Snowflakes. And script went nowhere. There was a point, Tom Hanks, Kevin Costner, Ryan, all of that. Nothing happened. So they came to me in 1994. I had my offices on 345 Maple Drive. I was working with New Line on a couple of projects. And they said, look, we have a story. We've been going around trying to sell this story. I said, what is it? He said, it's called Coma Guy. I said, what is it about? So they told me the story. He said, Arthur, everywhere we've been, most of the executives that hear it, they just fall asleep. So it was very funny to me. I then heard the whole thing. I said, so what do you want? He said, look, you're our last hope, because I've got to go back and flip hamburgers in Boston, Massachusetts, and I've got to go back to Long Island. He said, so I said, okay, why don't you write it? He said, well, we don't have any money. So I paid them to develop the script. The script got developed. The very same people that were turning the story down, there was a bidding war on it when the script came in, which is just a classic story of, and Disney bought it, and that's why you were came about.
Sandra Bullock come to the project?
The way Sandra Bullock came into the project was originally Disney wanted Julia Roberts, Meg Ryan, Demi Moore, which unfortunately, obviously you've seen the movie, it's about this girl that's in a toll booth. They were superstars. Demi Moore was a super. I mean, they were big names. So the director, John Turteltaub, felt, you can't really believe. Yeah, the believability was, a factor, of course. And then Sandra came in and she did the greatest reading. I mean, she really was fantastic. And that's how it got going.
Let's go to Rush Hour now. You did three enormously successful movies. You just got greenlit for a fourth one. How did Rush Hour come about?
Rush Hour, there was a writer by the name of Ross Lamanna who was working for Embassy Pictures as business affairs. And at one point, I was with him, we were talking, because I had something with Embassy with Mark Shankar. I don't know if you remember Rafi Etkis at the time. He was running Embassy. So anyway, he said, look, I'm starting to write. I said, I have an idea. It's called Torpedoes. It's about two hitmen. And one of them is a black sheep of the family. The other one's a lawyer. So cut a long story short, he went and wrote the script called Torpedoes. It was optioned by Sony, at the time Columbia, David Putnam, Don Steele, went to Orion, 6-7 places, optioned it. Nobody made it. It was supposed to have been greenlit with Eugene Levy and John Candy. So that went away. And I did While You Were Sleeping. And Ross came to me one time. This had just been maybe 2 weeks after While You Were Sleeping it was greenlit. He said, what do you want to do next? I said, look, I want to do an action comedy, an action movie. One of my favorite movies is French Connection. My other one is Freebie and the Bean. He said, what's Freebie and the Bean? I said, look, that was Alan Arkin and James Caan that could just completely improvise the script. And I said, there's a kidnapping movie entitled Cry Terror, which was an MGM movie in 1956. Why don't you watch those? So he went and watched those movies, and we talked a little bit about it and came back. And one day he said, here's a script called Rush Hour. Shut the door and read the script. So I closed the door and I read the script, and I thought it was a fun script. It was somewhat different to what it ended up afterwards. But he said, look, you've been very good to me, so you choose wherever you want it for, because you basically helped me with the idea. And I took Disney. There was some other bids from other studios, and Disney bought it. At that time, I believe, wasn't Joe Roth. I can't remember who was at the head, or maybe it was Joe Roth. Anyway, he turned around at some point and said, look, we can't make a movie with Jackie Chan. Right prior to that happening, I was with Mike Stenson, who was my executive at Hollywood Pictures. We brought in Jim Kauff, who wrote a movie called Stakeout, which is Richard Dreyfuss. Did a very good job with the rewrite. They were going to greenlight it. They wanted Martin Lawrence with Jackie Chan. I told them, and in my conversations, I said, there's only two Chinese leads at the time. It was either Jackie Chan, that was famous, or Chow Yun-fat. With Chow Yun-fat, it would have been far more serious. With Jackie Chan, it was more comedic, it was more in the vein of 48 Hours. So anyway, we get Jackie Chan, and there's another part of this story that I want to get into and bore you, but it's not boring, but it doesn't relate to this. I think you know some of the issues. Um, so Joe said, I don't think, Jackie Chan movies make any money in the States. At best, they'll do about 20 million. Um, and we don't want to make it. So then I got a call from Mike Stenson saying we're going to put it into turnaround. I got a call from New Line saying we really want this script. We want to make it. You made a commitment to Bob Shea that if you ever controlled anything or you ever wanted to do, you come to us. And DeLuca got on the phone and said, we just did a movie called Money Talks with this guy by the name of Brett Ratner. Why don't you also take a look at the movie? I saw the movie, liked Chris Tucker very much. And Mike said, I'm going to make this movie. I want to make it. So I basically gave them the rights.
And the rest is history.
And the rest is...
So let's talk about what you do as a producer. You got to find the script. You have to you develop that script. You put together the talent. You have to find the money, right?
Yeah, I mean, mostly what I have been doing, because I've really pretty much been in the studio system, not so much in the independent world. I always start with what it is that I like about the script or about the idea. If somebody gives me an idea or a treatment. And then after that, I try to find, if that person is the writer, he goes and writes the script, develops it, we work together. If it's an idea that somebody's giving it to me and I feel that, maybe somebody else should write it, I would sit down and discuss that with them. Most of the time, whatever I have done, I've just done by myself. No one's ever handed me a script and said, hey, Arthur, this is a spec script. We're attaching you as a producer. Go and, I've never been in that. It hasn't happened to me. So, but because I love movies, the way I approach stuff is I've got all these movies in my head from the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. I sit and I daydream about them. And if I have an idea, I either tell someone, hey, I like this idea. Why don't you write it? What do you think? Or if somebody comes to me with something, I kind of like push my button in my head, like a library of films, to see what it reminisces to. And then I take it from there and I work with them to try and get to that.
Are you able to get to the people to pitch who can greenlight? Do you have an agent who represents you, or do you just have your own relations?
No, I used to have an agent, but then I've been alone lately, by myself. And I mean, I pretty much rely on my relationships, and I've got quite a few at places that, at the time they were young executives, now they're heads of studios, but the whole business has changed so much right now. And it's kind of like, in a sense, it's uncomfortable to me to see that so many movies are being made that, end up being a streamer. It's just, they're all like forced. I don't know if I can explain that. It's just the Dog Day Afternoons and Midnight Cowboys and French Connections. I don't care if they say we can't make it now. That is not, to me, that is really incorrect. Because if you look back at some of our greatest directors, and I can only name two or three, but Scorsese and Tarantino and Spielberg, all of them, every single one of them, were obsessed with movies. I mean, Spielberg was climbing walls, Universal. Scorsese was sleeping in the theaters where his father would take him to watch movies, and it was just like, and Tarantino, out of blockbusters, and I mean, he knows every movie. I mean, that guy, he did a movie with Django Unchained, and I'm watching the movie, And there's a scene there where he uses a score from Jerry Goldsmith out of a movie called Under Fire, which was made years ago. No one knows that, but it worked so brilliantly. And that, to me, I mean, movie makers, I think, should be movie buffs, movie lovers. I think that is the passion for somebody to get up one day and say, "Oh, I want to be a director," but because this, that, the other. I don't know. I just
When you're pitching, do you come to them with talent attached, directors, actors, or is it open, just an idea? How do you get their attention to greenlight it?
um, if I have an attachment, of a writer that they think they really like, or if it's someone that I know that loves movies and I just have an idea and I trust them, I would go to him. I would say, "Hey, I like to, this is a pitch I'm telling you. Do you have anybody in mind?" I tend to not like just pick up the phone and call anybody around any of the studios. I've done that 3, 4 times, and each time, every idea I came up with turned out into a movie, and nobody even recognized the fact that I called them and told them I want to do this.
You mean you got ripped off?
Of course, it happens. Yeah, I got used to it, but
All right, let's talk. We have to leave pretty soon, but give me what you've learned. What are the do's and don'ts of being a producer?
okay. What I have learned is to be very much hands-on on the story you want to tell, but once you put your trust in your director, I think at that point, watching over his shoulder or her shoulder, do this, do that, is absolutely ridiculous. I think it's your team. It's the trust that you develop with the people that you choose. And best thing you can do is give every input you can, and be there. But I don't believe in getting down on the throat of the director.
Micromanaging.
Yeah, and micromanaging is to me, it's ridiculous.
All right, everyone. This has been another wonderful episode of Tune In with Trevor with the legendary producer, Arthur Sarkissian. Please stay tuned for future episodes. Like them if you can, and we will see you down the road.